It's Tuesday, the 7th of November 2023. Welcome to the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed Business News, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Adam Lang, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Adam.
Sean, story number 1 this morning. Westpac has reported a 26% jump in net profit to more than $7 billion, thanks to more activity in its business and institutional operations.
Westpac's full year 2023 results are a welcome relief for shareholders who have watched the bank go from number 2 financial institution behind Commonwealth Bank to number 4 over the past year. After yesterday's 2% rise in its share price, Westpac is back level pegging with ANZ, at least in terms of market cap, still well behind National Australia Bank and Commonwealth. Helping that rise yesterday was a $1.5 billion share buyback and a 14% increase in dividends.
Sean, drilling a bit more into the details, is this a good result?
Hard to know. Based on the share price, it is. There's certainly plenty in the result. The all-important net interest margin, essentially the difference between what a bank pays on deposits versus receives on loans, was up a touch for the year, but down in the second half due to competition in the mortgage market. Westpac's been competing hard to win market share in the home loan arena. Some metrics used to judge performance, such as return on equity, earnings per share, and of course net profit, all improved, but it still has a higher cost-to-income ratio. Effectively, it's not as efficient as some of the other banks. Now, Westpac will reduce the number of technology systems it runs from 180 to 60, spending $2 billion a year to do so. Ever since it bought St. George back in 2008, it's been running a myriad of technology platforms. Lifted provisions for bad loans, though, given we've had 12 rate rises since May, number of stressed loans is still at just 1.26%. It's pretty good. Chief Executive Peter King said there hasn't been a significant increase in customers falling behind. More good news. However, in terms of the outlook, operating conditions got tougher in the most recent 6 months, and that's expected to continue into next year.
Sean, story number 2. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese yesterday said his engagement with China's President Xi Jinping has been positive and constructive, and Xi has always honoured his word.
Albanese was asked whether he trusted the Chinese leader. He didn't just say yes. He sort of obfuscated a little. He said he's never said anything to me that has not been done, and that is a positive way you have to start off dealing with people. My job is to represent Australia's national interests. He's the leader of a different nation with different interests. Fair enough. Albanese said the relationship nowadays is driven by diplomacy, adding that it's changed over its 50-year history. Just before we leave Canberra, House of Reps aren't sitting this week, but the Senate is sitting. One of the announcements that came out yesterday was from Government Services Minister Bill Shorten. He announced $228 million more money to get more staff into Centrelink, Medicare and child support. That's good news.
Sean, story number 3. The Reserve Bank Board meets today with a consensus view being an increase in the official rate from 4.1 to 4.35%.
That means the standard variable home loan rate will be nearly 7%. If you've got a $750,000 loan, you'll have to pay another $126 a month or so. That means the difference between April 2022 repayments and next week, assuming there's a rate hike and it's passed on, is not far off $2,000 a month. That's a lot of money. Before we all start yelling and screaming, though, the goal is to reduce inflation. These higher rates seem to be working. And Australia started lifting rates later than most other countries, and somewhat comforting is the fact that those other countries have now seemed to be at the peak of their rate hiking cycle. We're talking about countries like the US, the UK, Canada, and the Eurozone.
Sean, story number 4, and it is Melbourne Cup day, but has the race that stopped the nation lost its zing?
Very good question, Adam. There's still plenty of money in racing, $900 million in prize money across the nation every year. Today's race has $8 million in prize money, and the winner gets $4.4 million. The jockey gets 5% or $220,000. The crowds at the races aren't quite what they used to be. There were no crowds in the COVID years. 10,000 people were allowed in 2021. Last year, 73,816 people turned up, a record low. Mind you, there was pretty much a flood around Flemington at the time. The record attendance for a cup is 123,000 spectators back in 2003. Hasn't been so good for ratings either. Not as good anyway. The number of viewers watching Channel 10 last year fell to 1.35 million. That was from 1.75 million a couple of years earlier. Most of it was about 3 million before 2015. Finally, we can't have today's show without a tip. Absurd with an E. Seems pretty applicable for a show like Fear and Greed. Adam?
Great name. Story number 5. Afghanistan is the world's leading producer of opium, and output levels have fallen 95% since Taliban authorities banned the crop, and that's according to a United Nations report.
Since returning to power in 2021, Taliban authorities have tried to end illegal drug production in Afghanistan, and in April 2022 banned the cultivation of the poppy plant from which opium and heroin are made. Now, the UN report shows that poppy cultivation has gone from 233,000 hectares to 10,800 hectares. Opium production has followed suit. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, though, points out that there are humanitarian consequences for many vulnerable rural communities due to the sudden contraction of Afghanistan's opium economy, as growers have had to turn to far less lucrative alternative crops, according to the AFP. Farmers' incomes are estimated to have fallen by 92% this year. So great to see heroin off the streets, not so good for the farmers.
Sean, that's it. The top 5 business stories in just 5 minutes, and including a tip for the Melbourne Cup. Fear and Greed's backing absurd. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Adam.
It's Tuesday, the 7th of November 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't enough, then find our longer podcast called Fear and Greed on your favourite podcast platform. I'm Adam Lang, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed Business News. We hope you have a great day.